In Johannesburg, are there any music genres that are kind of indigenous to that region that you might not find anywhere else?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple different types of music. There's so much music out there, you know. And by the time I started playing music, I wanted to play in a rock band. You know, one of my cousin's friends had introduced me to Nirvana. I, at that point, was still on my Police, Michael Jackson trip, and she introduced me to Nirvana, and the whole switch flipped, and I was like, I'm not playing the other stuff. Like, we're playing this.
The new age,
you know?
right? Yeah, that's great.
and so, like, you know, I was always around like kids and and band guys that were like into that kind of stuff, like grunge, post-grunge, metal. So I was always involved in that. So that's common there. But there are a couple of types of music you might not know. I mean, there's a like, it's almost like a dance techno kind of music called kwaito. It's very much like what Louisiana do with bounce. That kind of feel, you know, boom, ka, ka, boom, ka, ka, boom, ka, ka, boom, ka, 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 boom, ka, very like all over the place. So that was always around growing up. And then there's an Afrikaans style of music called Boere music, which ironically is very similar to Zydeco music. In fact, almost identical.
Really?
Which is kind of mind-blowing, really, because, like, you know, we're talking, this is a whole world away.
Sure.
So, again, for where we're at in the world now, how everybody wants to be so individualized and put labels on absolutely everything, we're all the same. We're all the same. I mean, we bleed the same, and even though we might have different types of titles for our music, when you break that music down, it's all very, very similar. And I'm not saying that to sound stereotypical either. It's like, but when it comes to Western world music, there's only so many things you can do. There's so many rules, and there's so many ways to break those rules. And there are exceptions to those rules, of course. But, like, you know, it's inevitable that we're going to have similar sounding things because, you know, the music I feel I wasn't exposed to much as a child, there goes my dog, was country. There was country there, but that was not anything that was ever played around my house. So that's been interesting, moving.
Sure.
And country's massive here.
Yeah.
And you kind of like, you go to a house party, someone's playing country. You go to a crawfish boil, someone's playing country. And so now I've really started getting into country. It's like, again, the rules are the same. It's just a slightly different way of singing, and it's a slightly different way of playing.
They all have the same bones. They just manifest in different
beautifully
manners.
Said.
Yeah.
Same bones.
That is
exactly.
funny. Where we are here, Louisiana's been taken over at various periods throughout the centuries by different cultures. For a time French, for a time Spanish. You had people coming from Nova Scotia that were expatriates and kind of reinforcing the French presence, but it kind of splintered into just a really diverse set of influences, you know, and some of them came together to form their own genre, and others stayed separate to kind of keep the flagpole stuck there, you know. But it's, I mean, to our benefit, you know, obviously.
Oh, it's such a melting pot.
Definitely.
It's incredible.
Because you got the brass, and you might have bongos, but you also have cajones, and you're bringing in different strumming styles. You could go on for days about all of these things. So I really feel like that the indigenous influence is really important on what comes out of the state, no matter if it's through traditional genres like country or bluegrass or whatever it may be, rock styles. But it's really interesting when you hear someone that comes from a certain region, and you can kind of pick that out. Even though they're, I won't say under the guise, but I guess sort of They are, let's say they are a country artist, for instance, like you were saying, but they're from the East, and you can hear a difference than you would hear in, let's say, Arizona or something, you know?
Yeah.
So it's really fascinating to hear that manifest itself.
Yeah.
And it becomes a kind of a style unique to that artist,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, totally.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So you were in Johannesburg until 19, you said?
Yeah, I was
19.
like 18, 19, around there.
Was the cause for leaving the band and signing, or your family moving?
No, purely the band. Purely the band. So we got, maybe got's the wrong word. We were going to do a showcase for quite a big label in England. And we kind of thought, like, we were doing very well. Like, we were selling out venues, we had songs on the radio. Like I say, we had signed this little independent deal. We were doing super well. That kind of level where you start to notice things are happening. Like, it goes from playing to 30 of your friends to suddenly your 30 friends and 30 strangers to suddenly your 30 friends, those 30 strangers and 30 of their friends, to suddenly, no, we can't fit more people in this venue, so you've got to go to bigger venues. So we were doing very well, and this opportunity came about to do this showcase for this massive label. And so again, young, stupid, we're gonna be fucking rock stars, you know? And so we took the opportunity, you know, as well as we were doing, we weren't making very much money.
Sure.
And so, like, we had to sell our cars and stuff like that, because, hey, getting a plane from South Africa to London, it's not like just chump change, you know, it's an expensive thing. Plus you need visas and stuff. It's not like back in the day where I think people could just travel without borders. So, like, we had to pay for these visas, and then we had to pay for this, and we're like, man, what are we going to do? Like, it wasn't like the showcase was happening the moment we landed. It was like, we had to go plan, and we didn't want to lose our edge, so we were going to try and go do a few gigs, and, well, why don't we tour the place? And we can do a tour before the showcase or in between and try and do it like that. And listen, long story short, it led to us, we were a 4-piece. It led to us leaving, and unfortunately things crumbled. Not immediately, but eventually, and the band kind of stopped. And whether it's a positive or negative thing, I'm not sure, but I was never the type of guy who would be like, all right, well, I'll sit here now and just see what happens. So I kind of started to see, or at least potentially see, what I thought was going to happen. And
with the band,
with
or
the band,
in industry? Okay.
With the band. And I was like, well, assuming the worst here, I need to start getting back on that boat, you know, and like, so I started writing some songs and stuff, and I'd made my mind up that once I got to England, I'd never been to that kind of place before, this kind of first world country that runs a large portion of the music industry. I was like, there's no way I'm going to go back. Like, we could have gone back. In hindsight, I sometimes think we should have gone back. But the way things had happened, you know, my guitarist and my bass player left, and they went back to South Africa. And my drummer moved to a different area than I was in. And I was like, man, like, I think I'm going to stick it out. And I'm going to try and go to some jams, and I'm going to write these songs, and I'm going to put out a record.
And at that point, you were a solo artist.
I was basically a solo artist, but I've always liked the idea of bands. And so I started working on material, because I play multiple instruments. And I started working on material, and this guitarist friend of mine, who actually landed up playing in a band with me for, man, close to a decade. After that, he let me use At least I think it was his. Again, a little blurry. We're talking a few years back, but he let me use one of those Tascam multi-track recorders. Now I don't know if you know what that is, but it's like it's really premature. You're recording to cassette, and I took a job at a bar, and so I was working as a bar back, and it was quite a beautiful situation. They let me. The places in England, I don't know if it works the same here, but the places in England, the pubs are such a infrastructure that they're massive. And most pubs will have live-in staff. They're called live-in staff, and you can live at the pub. So the pub's on one floor, and then another floor is where the staff can live. Not all the staff, they're usually the manager and an assistant manager kind of thing. And so listen, I'm trying to do gigs, and I'm doing jams in the evening and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, I need to make some money. And none of this is making me money. I'm in between things right now. So let me try and find a part-time job. And I managed to start playing with a band that was getting me a little bit of money, but wasn't enough. And I had days to spare, you know. I was trying to keep my nights free. And so I know I'm jumping around a little here, but it's going to come to a conclusion here.
Sure.
So I get this job at this pub, and they agree to let me live there for free, as long as I restock the fridges every night, you know, with the bottled beers and the wines and stuff like that. And I'm like, what? Like, I'm only getting back like when this place is closing anyway. I'm still buzzing from doing a gig. So like, okay, cool. And so I find this place. I'm not paying any rent. I'm spending the days writing songs. I'm spending as many nights as I can gigging. And then I'm staying there for free as long as I stock the fridge. So, or the fridges. And so that starts to happen. And when, at around this time, again, give or take, give me a little bit of flexibility, but around this time, I meet this guy who's heavily involved, this producer, heavily involved with this major label. And he's looking for, or at least I'm told, he's looking for a bass player for this new project that he's starting. So I'm like, well, cool, I can play bass, you know? And so he picks up the phone. I'm not going to mention the names here, but a cousin of a very famous singer, okay, puts this guy in touch with me. This guy picks up the phone, wants to meet. So I'm thinking we're going to meet and be like, you know, talk like this. Maybe about music, kind of get a bit of a vibe, see what happens. Maybe he's in the band. If he's a producer, he must know what he wants, you know. He doesn't want to talk about any of that. We meet at this coffee shop in central London. And dude, we're talking like long before smartphones, right? But like Motorola flip-up phones, they were like the Razors were like the thing, right?
Right, yeah.
And we sit down and he's like, hey, can I take a couple pictures? I've never met this guy. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Thinking, that's so freaking weird. But okay, like, what yeah. So he whips out this Motorola, he takes out a couple pictures. And he then sits down, he goes, all right, I want you in the band. I'm going to send a text off, or whatever. He sends off a text a couple minutes later, okay, I want you in the band. And I'm like, okay, but what band? Like, what's the vibe and this and that and this and that? And fast forward, I'll end up staying. I get signed with this other band. And the whole time, I'm just trying to start a new band. But now I'm with this other band.
Sure.
And so I'll end up staying there. And that's what led me to England.
Yeah.
You know? And I stayed there inevitably. And eventually that band broke up and I started another band. And it's just been like a constant domino effect, you know. This band does pretty well. No band lasts forever. Finishes. Next band.
Yeah.
Hey, we got a little bit further than this one. Or we didn't. Finishes. Next band. And the only thing I've ever tried to do, and it hasn't always been successful, but the only thing I've ever tried to do is, one, try and make the music better with each band.
Sure.
And two, obviously as we age and we change and we grow, be more real to that rather than, oh, I want to just be Nirvana, bro, like when I was 16. And three, you know, just try and do everything you can to expose that to a larger audience than the previous one.
Sure.
But again, that's not necessarily always easy to say, because, or even fair to say, because I've been in bands and the genres have been slightly different with each band. Not dramatically so, but I was in a hard rock band, the one that eventually or first led me to London.
Mm-hmm.
After that, I was in a pop, 100% pop bubblegum product band. After that, I was in an indie band, but with hints of rock.
Mm-hmm.
After that, I was in a hard rock band again. You know, and so like it's all relevant. It goes back to the Bones thing. It's like,
sure,
they're all the same. You're not expected to like it all. You don't have to.
Subscribe now.